Other words, I am not Palestinian.
Okay.
The very definition of Palestinian is a victim. And against so many odds, against so much violence in that culture, I choose to stand tall and strong, unbreakable. And there is no force on earth that can take that willpower from me. This is why they hate me. They hate me because they cannot be me. It's as simple as that.
To grow out of it.
A totally broken child in that culture. Totally broken.
So you, without going into the personal story, you grew up in a cycle of violence, indoctrination. What we see today as, you know, the children running around with Kalashnikovs and, learning in schools about hatred. When you were a child, that filled your heart with hatred towards what? Or what did they taught you to hate or to be a victim of what? And how did that
Who
shape?
they?
You're saying like the leadership that you saw, the TV series of the Mujahideen, the mosque.
It's an orchestra. There's so many forces, infinite forces. And you look today, we are living example. Instead of my little town, let's say we had much less forces at play that shaped our mentality. Today, look how many enemies and what drives them. You'll find the communist, Islamist, jihadist, even feminist in a very ugly orgy, all opposing forces that you don't understand. In reality, they kill each other. They're so conflicted. How come they are all coming together? They found their common enemy. So it's the reality of any society. There are many dimensions to this conflict: religious, economical, social, cultural, and human delusion plays a big role in it. So being brought up in such culture, I had so many reasons to hate. Now, where it becomes tricky, when they direct it by the name of God, like say that Allah hates the Jews. And this is, for many people, they don't understand that this is not only misinterpretation of the Quran. As someone who studied the Quran, I was required to study classic Arabic from very, very young age, to actually memorize the Quran. Like I had my homework every day to do the normal school, to study Sharia on the top of it, then memorize the Quran. So the Quran itself, which many people hear it in the mosque in a very nice chanting, and they say like, wow, how peaceful, how amazing. They don't understand the meaning of it. But the meaning is basically jihad and hatred towards the Jews. Even here in the mosques in Jerusalem, in Hebron we were the other day, the mosque is chanting 5 times a day, incitement against the Jewish people.
What do they say?
What worse than dehumanizing the Jewish people by what's supposed to be the creator of the universe when he says sons of pigs and apes, like for example. Well, this is supposed to be the creator and the legislator of the universe, and Muslims take it literally. It's not just an ancient book. You will not find the Bible recited 5 times a day, starting from 4 a.m. in the morning until after sunset, repeating same verses. It's only the Quran, and it's around the globe. So this repetition of incitement, when Allah authorized the Muslims, for example, to become the sword of God on earth, to punish the Jews for disobedience. Of course, not only inspired by the Quran, it exists in the Quran, but also Muhammad's practice. How did he deal with the Jewish tribes of the Arab Peninsula when Islam was born? There was ethnic cleansing. Many massacres happened, and that all was because the Jews rejected Muhammad's claim for prophecy, and it became a bloodbath between Muhammad and the Jewish people, only to tell him, you are not our prophet. And he did not want to accept the Jews the way they were. So he made them into disobedient, using a third hypothetical party, he called it Allah, to justify their killing. And it's still the same ongoing war. And I know that we can talk diplomacy, we can talk about how the Muslim people are a big population around the world, they are very wealthy, they are very influential, they are in governments, they are buying property in the West. How can we like basically as a Jewish minority to confront? It means destruction. It could be the destruction of civilization. And many people trying to avoid it. But this is my duty. It's my responsibility as someone who was coming from jihad itself. And the early conditioning that I'm trying to, you see, it's a paradox. I cannot just tell you there was one event that I was abused or I was tortured, I was indoctrinated, and all the violence of the culture and the hatred and the conflicted.
Growing into it and
then basically
molded.
Yes, then the audience, especially those who see it only duality, and they cannot see anything beyond that existence. Everything is two-dimensional to them. Mm-hmm. Then they are going to say, "Oh, poor guy, he was tortured. Now we understand why he's have this stance against the Palestinian people."
But what you're saying is exactly the opposite. So when you see now those children in Jerusalem,
Right.
the Arab children who are running around, sometimes throw rocks, sometimes are, going into these demonstrations, doing that. What does that make you feel? It takes you back. It takes you to that. What do you feel about it?
Look, during the first Palestinian Intifada, I did all that. I used to do so much trouble to the police, to the IDF. I used to throw rocks. I made the lives of the settlers nightmare. It's like how many trouble I used to cause every day. So those who come and say Intifada,
Which town
you know
was
what?
that?
Tell
us the location.
When I was Ramallah.
In Ramallah?
It's in Ramallah.
And in which towns were you active? Around
so it was I was like literally paralyzing all the main line going from Ramallah to Psagot, the settlement. It's basically I would like shut down the whole road, and I was only 15 years old.
Wow.
And I would take a bunch of my friends, put up masks, and go shut down the whole city of Ramallah, shut down the entire economy. We were capable of doing that.
And that
but
was
this is
part of the movement during the second Intifada?
No, it's just part of what happens to children when they don't go to school for about 2 years. And this is what Yasser Arafat did not want us to do. When the Intifada started, they paralyzed education, economy, transportation, and they turned the whole thing into chaos, thinking that they're going to exhaust the Israeli economy by doing that. And eventually where Israel has to submit to Yasser Arafat demands. So who paid the price? We did pay the price. So for us it was mujahideen. It was like the perfect idea. We see like they have a gun mujahideen from the mosque shooting at Sukhoi airplanes, and we think like, wow, this is amazing, give me some of those guns. But we don't have the guns. So what we do, we go through rocks. And when we did not have the opportunity to throw rocks on the settlers, we went and we directed this violence against actually the residents of Ramallah, which was mostly Christians, by shutting down their stores. It was our
once you didn't have that, you went to the Christian communities in Ramallah?
Of course, because the moment, it's like when violence is...
But they're not Jewish.
Listen, when violence is justified, okay, when violence becomes the method, and it becomes a culture that is praised, you want more of that. Now, if you don't have the Jews, of course you're going to find the other infidels, which they are the Christians. Many of the masked men, which were like basically our mentors, who gave us the equipment to go write graffiti on the walls and etc. And we were so young. Like the first time when I was arrested, I'm talking about from 15 to 18 years old.
Wow.
I was arrested multiple times by the IDF, and every time they see me, just see a child, so they let me go. Many of those times, I know you're curious to know many things, but I'm trying to express my point, so please, your patience. Yeah. Many times when I was arrested, I was actually wearing a mask. Midnight, I would escape our house to go write graffiti with the other Hamas members who wanted us to start behaving just like a militia. At a very, very young age. We did many, many daring things, and we found ourselves in situations where the IDF were there and we were caught in the act. And we were taken basically, but we were so young that the IDF had to say, okay, go home. If we were just a few years older, we would have spent in prison at least 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
So basically, this is the environment where we grew up. They started our conditioning as early as 8 years old, 10 years old. Then the Intifada came. Then they managed somehow to make us believe that the IDF, the settlers, were our enemies. And we could not find but rocks to throw at them. So for many people, we were running the whole show from very, very young age. And I kept going like this until I was cut with weapons this time at the age of 18 years old. This is when I was arrested.
What year was it?
It was in 1996. I was arrested in May 28th, 1996. It was the day Bibi came to power.
Wow.
The same day. The same day he came to power, the same day I got arrested.
So what was that? Was that a day of riots during the elections, or it was just part of a daily routine?
No, this was actually after the Palestinian Authority came to power, but also we were required to rebel against the Palestinian Authority by Hamas. And it was not about Israel, it was just inner rivals between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. And this is another dimension, conflict between Hamas, Fatah, Public Front for Liberation of Palestine, Islamic Jihad, FIDA, Hizb al-Tahrir. So many divisions and subdivisions. Even within Hamas, you would find Hamas in the refugee camps against the Hamas from the cities and Hamas from the villages, farmers.
But the idea is the same idea.
It's the same ideology, but it's very important to understand the divisions and the conflict. Like, the conflict between Hamas leadership in Gaza and the conflict between Hamas in the West Bank, not to be taken lightly. I guarantee you that they hate each other in a way nobody can understand. But somehow they find the common enemy, Israel, and that's what unified them. If Israel was not in the picture, naturally, they would kill each other. And we saw what Hamas did to Fatah in Gaza in 2006. So in this paradox, in fact, in this matrix, I really don't know where to begin or where to end. When you ask me about my childhood.
I want to tell you one thing about it, and I think, seeing that and hearing it from the other side. When I was 18, I joined the army. During the times of the Second Intifada,
Right.
I served as a combat soldier in Magav here in Jerusalem. And we had to deal with a lot of these riots, a lot of suicide bombings, a lot of terrorist attacks. And, you're talking about it, and all these sights and images are coming into my mind, and what we've experienced on the other side of it. It's,
Right.
It's,
Of course, but it's like, at least in your case, you belong to establishment that has many protocols. It's not just a gangster, let's go. So for me, my childhood to be stolen by crazy indoctrination as early as 10 years old, not understanding the bloodshed, not understanding the violence, and just blind, hateful hatred towards Israel, something that I did not understand. Something I just saw only in the uniform, as IDF, as soldiers. I had no clue about the culture, and they still don't teach the people about the culture. They don't teach Arab children about the Holocaust, about the historic right to Israel of this land, portraying Israel as colonizers, occupiers, drinking children blood for religious rituals. So this is very, very dangerous when you put it in the heart of a child. On the top of this, my father was a founding of Hamas. Then when the soldiers came, took him away from us, that's magnified my hatred towards Israel. And of course, I wanted to do this Intifada thing. We were the Intifada. So today, when I confront global intifadis, like any of them, I would take them and put them in situations where I was. They would literally shit their pants of how dangerous it was. But they're sitting in the West, where it's very comfortable, exploiting freedoms, and calling for Intifada. And to me, I say, it's like, we live this, and we know what Intifada is all about. It starts as a romantic chant from the river to the sea. Back in 1987, when the first intifada from the river to the
Yes.
sea, it was a very famous slogan during the demonstrations. But a couple of years later, it became a bloodbath. Suicide bombing, mass shooting,
Yeah.
suicide bombing, name it. And it destroyed everything. So for
like
us,
a ball of fire that you throw
Okay.
in the field, and then it just grow until it explodes.
yes, you can start it with a small flame, and nobody knows how this wildfire is going to end. And basically, this is why I say it's very dangerous. But at least for us, as children who were brought up there, and I don't know why I was brought up in that culture. I don't blame myself for my early conditioning, because I found somehow a way to break free from such hatred and, again, all the forces that made us go through rocks and become violent at very, very young age.
And that's, I think, what is puzzling and is mind-blowing to everybody, because most people who grew up in your environment, you know, there's a dead end. There's no way
Yes,
out.
but at least we grew up in that environment, and I don't understand why the white spoiled kids in the West want the Intifada. Like, at least for us, we had false religion, false identity, Palestinian indoctrination, violence on the streets, abusive culture, violence, name it, bloodshed. So that made us at least consider Intifada. But I don't understand those TikTok kids, you know, on the Western streets, what's really motivating them to call for Intifada?
To call for that bloodshed.
Yeah.
So what made you, maybe, you know, what made your turning point? At what moment did you question this ideology? At what moment did you open up your eyes to what that actually means?
Look, they lied to us. They lied to us. And they wanted us to become what's so-called freedom fighters. And we did that. When I was imprisoned at the age of 18, I witnessed firsthand Hamas brutality, which was beyond anyone's imagination.
Within, like inside the prison?
Inside the prison, where they were torturing basically their opponents, their rivals, and all those who were suspects of collaborating with Israel, even though many of these people were innocent people. But Hamas brutality was unbelievable. Hundreds of prisoners were tortured and killed during my imprisonment. So from 1996 to the end of 1997, I was released September 1997, about 16 months, my first imprisonment. During that time, hundreds of prisoners were tortured. And believe it or not, you know who was behind the torture? People like Saleh Al-Aruri, Ismail Haniyeh. Ismail Haniyeh was basically the head of Hamas security wing in prison, in partnership with Yahya Sinwar.
He was ordering those torture, those murders?
Yes, that was the command of Hamas. We need to find who were the collaborators, given Israel information. And they did not have mercy on any suspect.
Wow.
So Saleh Al-Aruri, Yahya Sinwar, Ismail Haniyeh, Ibrahim Hamid, all the big names that caused all this trouble living in Qatar and in Beirut after their release from Israeli prisons. So anyway, this is, I think, was one of the main turning points of my life. But as you see, it's a chain of events. It's a chain of events. And somehow they created monsters. You know, today, the Westerners, you know, when they see my Middle Eastern attitude and my language, it's like, what the hell is this? You know, is this guy still terrorist? What they don't understand, that first of all, when I'm speaking to Hamas. I'm not even taking consideration Western audience. Because I know that if I don't confront them, they're going to go much farther than this. And they are going to turn civilization into rubble. The same way they did in Gaza, the same way they did in Lebanon, by the way, the same way they did in Syria. The same way they did in Jordan. Wherever they go, they are going to bring destruction. And I see it coming in Europe, for example. And this is hence my fire, that I don't know like where to begin. Like how can I take them into my universe to understand that this is not a joke. It begins like a joke, but eventually it is going to become a wildfire, and everybody will have to pay the bills in blood. This is what we witness. This is how serious it is. And some people think that this is just an act. And the problem, I can be so selfish about this. Prior to the war, I was sitting in solitude, in silence, in my meditation for so many hours per day. I don't even get out of my silence. I was enjoying that very, very much. I did not feel the need to express any of my thoughts, even if I had any thoughts. But to wake up on October 7th and to realize that this needs to be stopped right now, immediately, especially when I saw that the pro-Palestine triumphing on October 8th, justifying the atrocities and the genocide committed on October 7th as an act of resistance. This is something that just brought, like literally projected an electric current in me that I cannot understand. Because I know if I tolerate it as someone who not only lived it, but someone who had been part of the project, that for many years I took it lightly to just identify as a Palestinian and say, okay, an identity. But after October 7th, to see that everybody just putting a scarf on their shoulder and they becoming Palestinians, justifying and legitimizing violence, and they want to globalize it. They want to globalize it. While Westerners not realizing how dangerous is this. This is what really made me rage. As someone who spent at least 10 years in the United States, and I love my country. It's part of my loyalty to my country, regardless of how many Americans today accuse me parroting Hamas narrative and parroting the Palestinian accusations of treason, which basically delegitimize me and ask for my execution. You know, as an American, today I'm an American. I never killed anybody in my life. I sacrificed 10 years of my life working undercover in counterterrorism to stop the indiscriminate targeting of civilians. And I went to America. I wrote a book about it in detail. I was not cut up, or let's say cut in the act. It was my responsibility to dedicate the book to my father so he can see through my lens for a moment. And somehow it became a very popular book in the United States. And at that time, at least, many Americans said, thank you. Thank you for saving human lives. I never claimed that I saved human lives. I said I stopped the suicide bombing attack, and I did not want to be rewarded for it. Because what can a reward, you know, when you lose your family? But today, to have a new generation of social media wannabes accusing me of the same accusations as Hamas that want me dead for saving human lives and expecting from me to apologize. They want me to apologize for saving human lives. This is how they inverted the truth. And this is how our reality became twisted. You know, where Israel became criminals and jihadists became praised as freedom fighters. There are consequences for this delusion. And of course, if it only end up to me, I already took the responsibility above my shoulders, because none of these people understand that it was my will, it was my decision to reveal myself to the public, to write the book about it. I was not caught. Very different if you get caught and you are accused of treason, or when you know that you did the right thing, and by writing it down and publishing it, you are going to be condemned to death. And most people would choose to hide. Yeah. The traitors usually, they are in hide. They are the double-faced creatures, not the ones who are very honest and genuine and that come forward and say, I did something that you believe that is completely wrong, but I don't think the same way. How can you go wrong in saving human lives? But here we are. And I wish it was only a death sentence over my head. And they may succeed eventually in hurting me or in even assassinating me. And I'm not afraid of that point because it's not my end.
So you're undergoing death threats every single day?
Whether death threats or not, we both know that there are so many people out there who want to silence me in any possibility. Whether if they want to cancel me or accuse me or discredit me or possibly physically eliminating me. But this is not going to kill my message, because sooner or later, what so-called Palestinians, and especially the new generation of Western Palestinians, those are the most dangerous right now. They're more dangerous than Hamas because they have so much freedom and they're exploiting, abusing the freedoms that are given in the West. Those are the very dangerous ones because they have a lot more freedom than Hamas. And they know the system very well, and they have the capacity to sabotage the establishment. So these people, they need to understand that the moment they ignite the fire, there are irresponsible people among their mob, and there are wolves among the sheep. Not everybody go in the street with a goodwill, anti-war activist. That's not everybody. There are people in the crowd who take it literally, who are influenced by the Palestinian indoctrination. And the Palestinian indoctrination is based on victimhood and hateful speech and hateful action. And so this is how violence eventually will happen. And I promise you, sooner or later, whether they kill me, whether I survive to live it, they are going to wake up at some point and find terrorism inspired by the name of Palestine. And I hope we don't go to that point where the West would act when chaos is taken over the capitals of the West.
So when you see today in Europe, we see a spread of the Muslim Brotherhood network. You see Turkish religious centers and Qatari-funded mosques. Do you recognize those echoes of radicalization, that like you see that path happening in Europe right now?
Look, when you have a generation after generation of migrants, mostly Muslims, where the establishment or the system, all the systems actually, have been overwhelmed by such a massive immigration. There is a failure of integrating these people into the culture. Well, what is the West? What is Europe without the values of the West? Without the freedoms of the West? It's basically another Saudi Arabia, another Pakistan, another Afghanistan. And Europe is heading in that direction because these people are influencing the system. Now the problem is with what's so-called moderate Muslims. This is where my problem begins. Because moderate Muslims believe not in physical jihad, jihad by the sword. This is very, very important to distinguish. That jihad has many, many forms. There is physical jihad by the means of the sword, but there is also economical jihad, and there is also social jihad, they call it da'wah, and there is also any financial jihad. The financial jihad, where very wealthy Muslim countries go and buy property everywhere. This property becomes an Islamic trust in a way or another. Thousands of mosques around the European continent, thousands. Those are now considered Islamic waqf. It's not a government property. And in these mosques, they don't separate mosque and state. European countries are very rigid and firm in their stance, separation of church and state. But that it does not apply to the Muslims and try to offend them.
Even are you saying that immigration, buying everything that's on purpose, it's part of a lighter jihad?
Let's say legal and illegal migrants are just pawns in the hands of these mega masters who run the economy. These people have compromised, and I don't want to specify certain countries. They compromised European politicians, educational institutions, and they know that about 15 to 20% of the population of Europe are basically Muslims today, where now there is jihad diplomacy or democratic jihad. And many new voices say, hey, why do we want to go and fight by the sword and come across as terrorists? Why don't we just take over? All we have to do is just vote. And when they are 20% of the voting power, of course the politicians have to take them to consideration. And the politician is only considered of the short-term interest.
You're saying this is a religious mission of those entities buying up politicians, universities, buying that influence as part of an ideological jihad.
Yeah, there is the unconscious majority that they actually don't work at this level of intelligence, okay? But also there is a minority that they're very clever and their game is very global. So these are the conscious ones of their game. And they know that the unconscious migrant, I would say Muslim majority in the West, can be manipulated to a certain degree. For example, it only take one incident. Some ignorant person can set the Quran on fire, and you would see Muslims protesting around the globe, hundreds of millions of people.
And even murdering them. We've seen in Sweden,
Yes,
we've seen
yes.
in a few places, executing them.
And you would see that leading countries, for example, like Saudi Arabia or Qatar, they won't try to tell the angry Muslim mob that this was just an incident. It's not the policy of governments in the West. Why are you boycotting the products and sanctioning the countries and intimidating the public and causing violence? You will not see any of these leaders saying anything. Why? Because this is basically their power.
You know, there's this argument that they're coming from poor countries, they're coming to London, they're coming to Paris, they want to enjoy the wealth, they want to enjoy the richness, they want to enjoy, the modernity, modern life, and technology and everything. What would you say to Europeans who truly believes in that?
Well, if the Europeans really want to share everything with the migrants, then they can go for it. I cannot stop. They can just basically start splitting their property and just give it to the migrants. It's not mine. I don't have a problem with that. But my problem with when they are legitimized as peacemakers, while in reality they are not. They are not believing in the Western values. And as someone who lived in the West, I know that the Islamic value system need at least to be dropped for a little bit in order to see the other values and maybe find something in common. I'm not against people, by the way, worshipping behind their closed doors in devotion to their God. If my mother was doing this and I was against it, I would never interrupt my mother's prayer. This is her devotion to her God. But when devotion, when worship becomes a political act, when it becomes prayer on the sidewalk, where people gathering in order to intimidate public, shouting out loud Allahu Akbar and doing their rituals out in the streets in the form of a political intimidation, then I have a problem with this practice.
You know what? This is like from a life-threatening issue. What about the other ones? Like we've seen in the UK, the Pakistani grooming gang.
Right.
Many people are calling this, a sort of a cultural issue as well, bringing it into Europe as well. and that the Europeans do not understand that in the scope of a cultural, like the cultural aspect of it. So not life-threatening, but even like women's right, raping little girls, things like that that are being legitimized, like in the UK, or being covered up.
Covered up, yes, but I don't think legitimized. Take for example Lebanon. Lebanon is the only Christian, or was the only Christian country in the Middle East, the same way like Israel is the only Jewish country in the Middle East. And there was a huge possibility for peace between both nations, by the way. There's so many things in common between Christianity and Judaism. But then what happened? Gradually and slowly, Shi'i invasion, Sunni invasion, immigration coming from Egypt, from other parts, from Iraq, from the Arab Gulf countries, invaded Lebanon, and it changed its identity. Suddenly it became more of a Muslim. Then add to that come the Palestinians. The moment the Palestinians entered Lebanon, Lebanon turned into the worst civil war in the region that lasted 15 years, that destroyed Lebanon. The pictures that we see today in Gaza, Beirut was a lot worse than Gaza during that time. And Lebanon still bleeding because of that civil war. The combination of this confused, conflicted religious identity, okay, that's like there is not a fixed thing, that one thing called Islam. And people come with many different ideas. And in reality, if there was no common enemy, Shi'i Muslim would kill Sunni Muslim. Alawi Muslim would kill other sects of Islam. History is witness. History is witness. So now, take Lebanon. Lebanon somehow is the future of Europe if things will continue to be like this. And I warned this from the podium of the United Nations some 2 years ago. And I said, if the world legitimize or justify the jihadist massacre against the Jewish minority that happened in the enclave of Gaza, Europe is going to fall apart. And today, they succeeded. Why? Because the politicians are afraid of the Islamic violence and Islamic intimidation, and also they are pulled by the Islamic temptation in the meantime, which is basically the Arab Gulf money financing, which owns up to 10% of the bonds of some countries. This is very heavy. So with that said, we need to understand what's happening in Gaza could be the future of Europe, the danger in Europe. And this is my prediction. I don't think the Muslims will succeed of taking over Europe. I don't think so. But I know for sure that they are capable of turning Europe into a civil war, especially if the governments in Europe continue to betray their own people, the indigenous of the land, the ones who understand the value and the ethics and the foundations that brought their civilization to this point. And they are losing this gradually. They see it. People are not stupid. And they see the betrayal of their leadership. While, for example, in the UK Prime Minister said just recently, praising the Muslims' contribution, charity, etc., trying to sell British people a version of Muslims that actually don't exist, while in reality they have been protesting since the beginning of war pretty much every Friday in the hundreds of thousands, and it really has nothing to do with Gaza. It has only one thing to do: to intimidate their rivals in the UK, to intimidate the locals, the indigenous people, to show them, hey, we are real power right now, and we have our cause. And their cause, this hateful cause called Palestine, is unifying all of them: Shi'is, Sunnis, Pakistanis, Afghanistanis, illegal, all these people, please, all these people. So basically, they are intimidating the public. It is going to be just a matter of time before the indigenous of the land, okay, the same scenario that is happening here in Israel, The Gazans, the West Bankers, economical immigrants, like it or not. They're not indigenous to the land. And today, this conflict that is happening between Israel, they inverted the truth, the reality. Israel became the colonizers, and the invaders who came by the name of Islam turned Jewish property and Jewish intellect and Jewish religion into an Islamic thing by calling all the prophets of Judaism Muslims. And even the gods of Christianity Muslims. Built their mosque on the top of Temple Mount, on the top of the Jewish temple, where they don't allow the Jewish people to worship in their own capital, under, by the way, the control of the Israeli government. What does that tell you? They are capable of inverting truths, twisting narratives, and if they play the same game in Europe, Europe is gonna wake up at some point where they're going to find themselves basically in a confrontation, a deadly confrontation, much worse than Gaza.
So what would be your message to that leadership in Europe? Give them a message of, from your perspective, understanding what you've been through,
Right.
what you've seen that happen here, and what is happening right now in Europe.
Listen, I don't have message to the politicians. If they are compromised, if they are addicted to power, if they cannot drop their selfish interest for a moment to think about the future of the children and the future of generations to come, then nothing can stop them. They are going only one way.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, they don't care because they're only thinking about my term right now.
Mm-hmm.
And to just appear to be successful. Then generations to come will have to deal with the consequences of their wrongdoings today. And they would never be blamed because nobody would be able even to make the connection that where it started, how it came about.
So what would be your message then
To the people.
to the
Yes.
Jewish community, the Christian community?
First of all, to the Jewish community.
Indigenous Europeans?
Okay, to the Jewish community, I personally choose just recently to return to Israel. Okay, and I recommend to anybody, okay, that if they feel unsafe in France or in the UK, other locations, that they bring their Jewish brain back home, let them bring their finances, and come home. Here it's much safer for them. We need them. We need to build the country. We have so much to build. And as our war concludes here, their war will begin there. So if the situation is going to get to the point where the European governments fail to protect the Jewish minorities, in favor of the Muslims, then I highly recommend to this Jewish population to basically come home. Mm-hmm. For the indigenous of the land, they need to start protesting peacefully against their government. When they see hundreds of thousands of Muslims with collaboration of locals who are basically confused people. They think they are on the right side of history. They think they are the saviors of Gaza children. And they are not understanding the dynamic that Palestine is only a device to intimidate and to take over and to conquer, to show power. This is why they've been protesting. You know, even Ramallah, my hometown, and it's not even 50 miles away from Gaza. People haven't been protesting every Friday against what's happening in Gaza. So how come people in London are so outraged, protesting every week? What does that tell you? Their game is not Gaza. Their game is to intimidate the indigenous of the land and the politicians, to tell everybody in the UK and France and other locations that we are the new power and nobody can cross us. And look how we demonstrate it. It was never about Palestine. So we need a counter force. Where are the indigenous of the land? Where are the real people? But of course, you know, in democracies and people are very peaceful. They are not like the ones coming like us from the Middle East. We are Middle Easterns. We speak in passion. We express ourselves powerfully.
I'll tell you why. You know, you were talking about how a lot of the mujahideen, a lot of the incitement, the indoctrination actually happen in universities. in Jordan, the university, in Egypt, in these places. And it feels like right now in universities in Europe and other places, they are teaching them to hate themselves, to hate their culture, to hate their history, to be bystanders and just watch that happen, to be numb to what is happening. I mean, to have the force to go out of your home, to risk yourself like you did, to march in the street, to demonstrate like that. I saw just last week some grandmothers walking with a British flag in the streets, and now they're starting to wake up to that. It takes a lot of bravery, and it takes a lot of love and patriotism towards your own country, to your history, to your identity. You need to be self-secure in your identity. You need to really know it, to study it. What many students are not questioning these things anymore.
Right. It's not only students. I mean, so many people are afraid. Today it became a crime to actually criticize, even online, to criticize the pro-Palestine. And this is the submission of compromised and weak leadership, that they now rushed to recognize a Palestinian state, for example, as a reward for the Palestinian violence, rather than holding the Palestinians, whether if they are in Gaza in the form of Hamas or in the West Bank in the form of the Palestinian Authority. There is no difference. Instead of holding them accountable, to show them that there is no freedom without responsibility. Instead, they want to give them more freedom so they can cause more destruction. It was not enough in Gaza to see the total failure of the Palestinian jihadist model that destroyed the entire strip. They want to repeat it again in the West Bank. And now exactly this is what they are doing. By rewarding terrorism, the only outcome is going to be the dismantlement, a new intifada in the West Bank, clashes, more bloodshed, dismantlement of the Palestinian Authority eventually, because Israel is not going to tolerate any Palestinian entity sits on the top of Judea, overlooking Ben Gurion Airport, that is going to launch missiles or similar attacks to October 7th. And the sad reality that European or even Australian leaders, they understand the Israeli security needs in Judea. And they know that the entire country is a very small strip, that actually it's barely fitting a sovereign state. And they are insisting on fitting two elephants in the eye of a needle. This is their attempt. And they know it's a dead end, it can never work. And Oslo was never meant a two-state solution. Nothing mentioned in Oslo of a two-state solution. It was a dialogue, a negotiation in good faith towards peace that could have been an Arab League, an Arab Federation, confederation, but Israel would have never agreed on another state, a sovereign state, on the top of the state of Israel. Not possible. Nobody agreed on that. And for those who are actually familiar with the Oslo Accords, they can go through it. So basically now for these entities, for these foreign governments to come and force Israel to accept a Palestinian entity, this is a direct threat to the Israeli national security and Israel's very existence, especially in the shadow of October 7. You would think that after October 7, such governments would think, oh my God, it's like now the Palestinians lost all their chance of any state. But instead of realizing that, and they know the truth, they double down only to mock Israel, while Israel is bleeding on multi-front war with Iran, Hezbollah, Houthis, Syria, even in Iraq and Gaza. This is unbelievable that other democracies stabbed Israel in the back knowingly what Israel is going through. And this is not going to go in void. And it will lead only to violence and the failure, total failure of any initiative towards Palestinian statehood.
Wow, Mosab, I know we could continue and talk for days Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate. I'm absolutely certain that many people will really enjoy this podcast, and it will really might open their eyes. I'm really grateful for everything that you've been doing in the last 2 years, taking on a personal risk to your life in order to defend the truth and to bring it out. This is incredible, and not many people are brave enough to do so. So thank you. I personally really appreciate it. I know many people around the world do.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you. And
it was
good
a
luck.
pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
It's 2025. America's debt is over $37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide, or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.